Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today, you're going to get my first impressions of the GG End set. All the cards have been translated for us on the lovely PokeBeach website, so we're going to be looking through everything. This is literally the first time I'm seeing a lot of these cards, so it will genuinely be a first impressions video. I won't have any prior knowledge for a lot of the ones that we haven't already discussed. So we're going to go straight back down to the trainers, as always, and go through all of those, and then we will jump up to the Pokemon afterwards, because these trainers are sort of like universal and synergistic cards that we can keep in mind when we're talking about the Pokemon themselves. So let's start off with Tag Switch. A few of these I'll be sort of going over again. I did go through them in the news, but I'll quickly jump over them again. Tag Switch moves 2 energy from one of your tag team Pokemon to another of your Pokemon. Obviously very synergistic with like quad tag team decks if you're going to try and do it with some sort of Ace of Roller shenanigans. Stuff like that could be really awesome. And I think this will see play in like some tanking tag team stuff. Really good for like Celesaur. You could like move a couple energy from one Celebi to another one and then Ace of Roller the other. And just start, like, continue your assault, really, with, like, DC attachments and stuff that turn. So I think this is a good card, especially for tanking tag teams. And, yeah, we've seen that Pika Rom has played, you know, 4 Energy Switch and 2 Multi-Switch sometimes in, like, the Turbo Rom builds. Now we can add in a couple copies of this, and if you full blitz to the bench, you can quite easily jump straight back into the active to get a big Tag Bolt GX off. So definitely worth noting. Reset Stamp has set the world on fire. A lot of people are having mixed opinions about this card. I'm going to do a full video on Reset Stamp because I think it is the most impactful card we've seen in a long, long time for the game. Basically, since N was rotated, we didn't have a card similar to this that could disrupt your opponent's hand in such a way. And I feel like it does need its own little spotlight, so I'll probably do that tomorrow. But Reset Stamp, just quickly, it's a trainer card that forces your opponent to shuffle their hand into their deck, and then they draw a card for each of their remaining prize cards. So this is literally the N style effect, but only your opponent's side of the field. So why is this different from N? Well, N was always a 4-of index, you know, for the most part. And that's because N was always good in the early turns. You never minded seeing an N, because at the very least, you'd be getting yourself a fresh hand of 6 cards to help you, you know, be consistent and whatnot. So Reset Stamp is not instantly going to be a 4-of index because it doesn't help you with consistency. Turns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, really bad for you, really. It's only really when your opponent is being an aggressive deck, they're ahead of you, or even if they're just keeping toe-to-toe a lot of the time, where you can send the Reset Stamp their way and put them to a low hand size. And hopefully it means that they don't, you know, have optimal turns from then on and you can catch up. So having a catch-up mechanic is integral for a Pokemon trading card game, especially because taking prizes inherently always gives the opponent more advantage. They get hand advantage, board advantage that the opponent has to re-establish because you've just knocked out a Pokemon, assuming that they have energies and stuff on as well. So your opponent not only gains extra card advantage, but if you've just suffered a knockout, you need to spend more cards from your hand to rebuild, and you need to do more things that turn. So it's inherently unfair that the person winning the game basically just keeps getting further and further ahead as the game goes on. So having a comeback mechanic, specifically because of the mechanic of prizes, which is the way that most games are decided, we need to have comeback cards in the game. And this is an absolutely brilliant one. I think having the disruption aspect is huge. You can also use supporters on the same turn, so you can use things like Guzma to also knock out your opponent's draw engine sometimes if they only have one sort of Zebstrika or Jirachi or whatever else on the board. You can try and knock that out on the same turn. That was one of the reasons why Zoroark was such a strong deck defensively in the previous format with N, because you could do the Bloodthirsty Eyes plus N combination, knock out their draw engine, whilst also hitting them with that N and trying to deny them from drawing cards. That's one of the reasons why it was so strong offensively early game and also defensively if you're behind, which is awesome. The Reset Stamp, I think, will be best in decks that can search it out pretty quickly. So there's going to be either Zoroark decks or Salazzle decks that can draw a bunch of cards every turn, so you'll naturally have Reset Stamp for the turn that you need it. Or there'll be some tutoring aspects in there as well. Green Search is a fantastic supporter card where if you're not playing your own abilities, you can search your deck for 2 trainer cards, I think. And this is obviously an item that you can pick out. And also there's Volkner for lightning decks. You can just play like 1 or 2 copies of Reset Stamp. I think in many ways it will be a 1 or 2 copies kind of card, just to really set the opponent back on the key turns that they need. But I don't think this is necessarily going in every single deck, actually. I think you may begrudgingly have to for a lot of decks, but think about Malamar and how it needs to have a lot of commitment to its own ball search. It needs to have a lot of good supporter draw. Really, if you are going Jirachi based, you could just play like 1 copy or something, but it's not going to be as often as you saw N. N was always a 4 of in like everything, but Reset Stamp is going to be like a 1 or 2 of that sometimes people have to like Ultra Ball away anyway, just because it's in their opening hands and it's useless. So I think the card is much more balanced than people give it credit for, and I think it's phenomenal for the game. So you'll hear more about my opinions on Reset Stamp. That was just a quick overview, but overall the card is incredibly strong, but in a fair and balanced way, which I'm happy about. It's a brilliantly designed card, in my opinion. Fantastic. The only sort of downsides, the only criticisms I can give it is for stall and mill decks, where they're never taking prizes. The opponent is always trying to take the prizes. You can always have Reset Stamp available. Obviously, like Sylveon can tutor it out. Steven's Advice can tutor it out. And you can combine it with like Plumerias or Lieutenant Surge. You can do some wacky combos where you like Surge and like double Mars their hand or something like that, and you can get them down to 0. So there are fear factor elements behind this card, thanks to other cards that are also in the format. But the Reset Stamp overall, I think in a vacuum, is fair and safe. Next up, we have the Black Belt item card. It's a tool that says, if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, the attacks of Pokemon this card is attached to cost a fighting energy less. So it's essentially a counter gain, but specifically for fighting energy. And this is a nice little option. Obviously, there's the Machamp and Marshadow tag team, which has a revenge style attack. If you have searchable means of getting the Black Belt, it means you can use any color of energy to fulfill its colorless cost. So it makes this card even more splashable if you have means of finding item cards very easily. So that's really awesome for the Machamp, because Machamp Marshadow is very good at knocking out Zoroarks and Pikaroms, and at the moment, like as of recording, those are 2 very relevant archetypes. Obviously the fire stuff coming out looks very promising, and any stuff in this set could be promising, so the fighting typing may be less relevant, but as of right now, it feels like a relevant type to still be hitting. So that's something that we do need to bear in mind, and giving fighting Pokemon a couple good comeback mechanics now. There's this trainer and also the stadium that buffs their damage if they're behind by 40, so fighting looks to be one of these decks that likes to come back from behind now, apparently. Next up, we have Grimsley, the supporter that says, move up to 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another of your opponent's Pokemon. I think ultimately, this isn't very strong. Using your supporter should be for stronger things a lot of the time. This can set up some cute math for you in random spots, but I think overall, we already have Magical Swap and stuff like that for better uses and, you know, more fluid uses of moving counters around. We have, like, lots of spread options. We have also, what's it called? The spell tags as well for psychic decks. So I don't feel like Grimsley is like fast enough to ever be all that good. We have Coach Trainer, a supporter card that lets you draw 2 cards. If your active Pokemon is a tag team, you draw 2 more cards. So a free draw 4 for tag teams alone is probably still not good enough, I want to say. If maybe you're playing a quad tag team build, you can guarantee a draw 4. And I still think that's not that great, to be honest. I think comparable to like a Lily, you're probably drawing less on the early turns, but like more throughout the mid game, so that's reasonable. But if we are playing quad tag teams, we're going for green search anyway a lot of the time, so maybe this is like a supplementary card for tag team based builds. I don't think it's incredible. A flat draw 4 is pretty solid, but I don't feel like this is a 4 of, even if you're playing tag team based builds. And there are obviously times when this is a dead card in your hand as well. If your tag team isn't ready, isn't in the line of fire. This is actually potentially a good card for Celosaur, actually, thinking about it now. Celosaur's really looking for better supporter cards. At the moment, I'm playing like a couple copies of Erica, and I could see Coach Trainer going in. At the same time, though, Celosaur's probably dead because of all the fire stuff. So, yeah, Coach Trainer looking to find some like quad tag team builds, but overall doesn't seem ridiculously powerful. Big Oven is a stadium card that is absolutely bonkers, in my opinion. Once during each player's turn, that player may discard a card from their hand. If they do, that player searches their deck for 2 fire energy cards, reveals them, and put them into their hand. This has insane synergy with Salazzle and Welder. You could even discard a fire to grab 2 more fire, just to roast reveal even more, and then fire crystal it all back. It's just another card for the big fire package that's going to be insane. and helps this deck draw even more cards and thin the deck even faster. So ridiculously powerful stadium card. This can also be like a reset stamp protection type card, because you get reset stamp to like 2. If Big Oven's still in play, you can just Big Oven and like double Salazzle your way out of that problem and just get game. So that's insane. Looks like we have reprints of Escape Rope. These all have the A next to them, so they're not going to be in the cycle for any longer than they already are. But we have Escape Rope Nest Ball. We have the Rotom decks next to a Nintendo Switch. And we have a new Tantalizer, which is awesome new artwork. Big fan of that. Awesome. All right, let's jump back up to the Pokemon. It's only a mini set. I believe it's 54 cards, so there shouldn't be too much to talk about. I think so far the reset stamp is by far, and I don't even know what Pokemon are coming out. Nothing will be more impactful than that card. But yeah, looks like for Grass type we have one Grass type Pokemon. It's a Carablast, and it does 10. Oh, sorry, it does 20 and 10 to itself. Then we have a Magmortar. Let's see what this does. Yeah, it looks pretty terrible. Even with all the fire support, this won't see play. The Heatran GX is one I've already talked about as well. This one probably won't see play. Again, with all the fire support it has. Its ability is really strong. It can jump into the active. Or sorry, when it jumps into the active, you can move all the fires from your other Pokemon to him. So he can steal a bunch of energy all at once. And the biggest problem is Explosive Stamp doesn't do enough. And Heat Bomber GX does do a good chunk, but you know, you need a lot of energy commitment, so you need like 4 or 5 energy, and if you have 4 or 5 energy on board, you may as well be doing big attacks with the likes of Reshizard and stuff like that. So I think this is either like a tech one-of in Fire decks, but in my opinion, probably not good enough to see play. We have a really interesting Chandelier line. The Litwick can grab yourself a Fire Pokemon, which is worth noting. Chandelier just as the Lampent just as a flat 40. Chandelier has 140 hit points. It's a stage 2 Pokemon that has 1 attack for a single fire energy, Soul Burner. You do 10 and discard the top 5 cards of your deck. This attack does 60 more for each Pokemon you discarded. Then put any number of discarded fire Pokemon onto your bench. I actually think this has potential. Stage 2s are easy to come by these days because we have the Jirachi build if we want to, or the Ninetales build if we want to. And because that's Pokemon-based, you can really make thick lines of those work. You could have like a 4-4 line of Ninetales, just so that you can guarantee yourself rare candies for turn 2, and then just bin off extra ones for your damage later on in the game. So either having heavy Jirachi or heavy Ninetales sounds good, and then we have a number of fire Pokemon that we might want to cheese into play via this attack. There's the Salazzle, which is obviously insane for drawing more cards. There's the Incineroar, which buffs damage from your Pokemon, which is incredible as well by 30. So we have more reliable damage as we push into the late game. There's also some other fire Pokemon that you could think about. It's also any number as well, so you don't have to put any of these. You could just keep them in the discard pile, and then just like Brock's Grit or Rescue Stretching them straight back into your deck. So I can actually foresee... Oh, there's a Blaziken as well, which is cool. You can just get fire energies back, so you actually need to only play like a low count of fire energies. So I foresee this deck becoming similar to like a Vespiquen-based build where you fill the deck out with like, you know, 20 or so Pokemon, try and go for big Soul Burners, get big damage off. You know, you're doing 60 for each Pokemon, so even if like 2 or 3 of the top 5 is there, if you've already got Incineroar in play, that's taking one-shots, and that's pretty incredible. So striking that balance between supporters and stuff might be a little awkward. It may end up looking similar to like how a Gyarados deck looks. It has a very similar feel to it. The Distilled Blast Gyarados. I think the Chandelier is similar on that like fun scale, but there's going to be those highlight reel moments where you get like multiple Incineroar down, and this guy's just doing a silly number for 1 attachment, which is pretty crazy. And you're naturally going to be playing like a 4-4-4 Chandelier line, so it should be pretty easy to get them into play, especially if you play like Thick Stretcher and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty interesting card, and one that you shouldn't just ignore off the bat. Next up we have a Raichu and Alolan Raichu Tag Team GX, 260 hit points, basic lightning type. Obviously there's a lot to live up to for lightning types right now, seeing as there's a tag team that is already seeing a lot of play, and there's a lot of lightning support right now. Tandem Shock for lightning colorless does 80. If this Pokemon was on your bench and became your active this turn, this attack does 80 more damage, and your opponent's active is now paralyzed. 160 plus paralysis isn't too shabby at all. We have a lot of damage buffs. Potentially this is like a one-of in a Pika ROM just because you can full blitz onto him, and then he can, you know, Zero Aura retreat into the active, and you're straight away doing 160. 190 with Band is already a good number. We have that Zero Aura support anyway. If you're not even going full Blitz based, you can go just with, you know, your Thunder Mountain and your Coco Prism Star and stuff. I feel like it's a lot less of a big payoff than a full Blitz, but it has reasonable base damage. And Paralysis, you know, isn't all that strong, but it still forces the opponent to play Guzmas and forces the opponent to play Acerolas. And, you know, only Zoro really plays Acerola, so if they're Guzmaing around your tag team, they're not attacking it as well, which is very good for you in a way. The Lightning Ride GX attack, for 2 Lightning colorless, you do 150 and switch this with one of your bench. If this Pokemon has at least 2 extra Lightning Energy attached to it, you do 100 more damage. So 250, again, reasonable number, pushable with Electro Power and Choice Band and all that good stuff. I think right now it's just sort of in the shadow of Pikarom, but I think it's not the worst card. It just feels a little vanilla in comparison to what Pikarom can achieve. Worth noting it has 260 hit points, so at least it's out of Sledgehammer range, but it still has that awkward fighting weakness that, of course, is going to be keeping it at bay for a little bit. We have a new Pikachu, fan of the artwork, of course, but not much else to say there. Then we have an Alolan Raichu, 110 hit point stage 1, 1 retreat cost. Weak to fighting, of course. It has Electric Rain for a lightning. Discard as many lightning energy from this Pokemon as you like. Yeah, pretty poor. Good enough for Cube, though. That's going in. Very good. Stunfisk. Terrible. If you have Tornadus on your bench, 50 more damage. Yeah, probably pretty bad, but DC for 70 is actually interesting for a potential like Zapdos counter, because we're really looking for things that can just knock out Zapdos. This also has 120 hit points and isn't weak to lightning. Potential Zapdos counter if the Tornadus is reasonable. What's this other attack do? 40-20 of your bench. Oh, so it's similar to... Its second attack is similar to Giratina's, but does 10 less base damage. A little Marowak I've already talked about. It has a free attack called Soul Breaker. Discard the top card of your opponent's deck. If the discarded card was a Pokemon, this attack does damage equal to the hit points of that Pokemon. Obviously, you can't really control your opponent's top decks all that well. There's the Zag Pickle item card, but that's really about it. And yeah, it's like mini mill / mini damage, but it's really unreliable and probably not very good. Then we have Drifblim. It has the Tag Carry ability. Once during a turn, you may switch your active tag team with one of your bench Pokemon. Maybe this is trying to be another synergy type card for your Alolan, Raichu, and etc. I think overall, it's just going to be too slow to have a stage 1. It even has this guy in the background. See, I know the synergy is better than Pokemon does. Well, as well as Pokemon does, I guess. Yeah, I think this is going to be too slow. Probably not good enough. Giratina comes in with an ability, Dimension Talon. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may discard a special energy card from your opponent's active Pokemon. So it's a enhanced hammer but only to the active as well. So it's not that flexible, but still a guaranteed removal of energy. Searchable as well. Obviously, we have Treasure, Ultra Ball, and that's going to be really nice to grab it if we really need to. Its attack isn't quite strong enough, though. 70 and just your opponent's active is confused, so that's pretty, like, bang average. It feels like just because this can't hit the bench, it's a little bit weak. Potentially worth noting if there are going to be mill archetypes that do play Giovanni's Exile. This could be like a one-off just to like recycle with Giovanni's Exile. So I guess that's worth noting for like Rhyperior-based mill strategies, but that's really all I'm seeing off the bat. We have a Moshana, sending stuff to sleep. That looks terrible. Cubone looks pretty bad. Metatite. Oh, so yeah, of course we have to have a Cubone because there's no Alolan Cubone, unfortunately. Medicham. Fighting. Master's Blow. 120. Oh, sorry, 60. If it has a black belt attached, 60 more damage. So you need to be behind the whole game. I guess the idea behind this card is that you have a stadium and black belt and just 1 energy attachments for like 120 or 160 push with the stadium, I guess. But you can't put Choice Band on because you're going to have the other thing anyway. Yeah, this is really bad. We have a Gibble. Artwork appreciation once again. It's the nice little like cotton wool guy. Then we have Garchomp, 150 hit points, stage 2. Fighting type with free retreat. Counter Aura is its ability. If you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, this Pokemon's attacks do 80 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So, wow, this is really pushing that fighting, like, coming back from behind type mechanic, where we have the Stadium, this ability, and the Black Belt all in one package. So, we can be off the bat doing 120 more damage from its ability in Stadium alone. And it has the Aura Edge for fighting colorless, 80. You may discard an energy from this Pokemon if you do 40 more damage. Flexible, big damage. Obviously, we're trying to come back from behind. You're a Stage 2 deck, so you probably will drop prizes in the initial phases. Maybe you can take some big knockouts. Fighting typing is good typing. Yeah, there's something here. I don't think it's incredible because, I mean, I guess we have counter energy as well. You can still choice band on top of this. Maybe they're trying to give us a lot of comeback mechanics from the fighting stuff right now. I think the issue is, though, like, we can't really push ahead with this card ever. We have Diancie to push damage. 140, 170. I guess we can close the game if we just, like, Diancie, Guzma, Alele, and take our last two prizes. It probably, like, requires us to be behind for a large portion of the game and then clear up on Alele somewhere. But because this is a Stage 2 that's pretty tanky, it has potential, but I don't think it's quite perfect. Still gonna have to jump through some hoops, because you need to have, like, Stadium out a good amount of times. You need to work towards this Garchomp. I don't think it's quite there just yet. One thing worth noting, of course, we do have that Lucario that can help you grab some of those pieces to have, like, a draw engine. But yeah, that's really about it. Okay. Next up, we do have another Lucario. Your tag team Pokemon take 20 less damage from your opponent's attacks. Pretty average to me. I don't feel like this sees play. Worth noting, though, is that this guy evolves from a Riolu. And we already know that there's a lot of Lucario seeing play currently because of its typing. And potentially, if we're going to have a deck that's already playing the Lucario in your own build, maybe add in one copy of this if you're tag team based, and then you're teching for Zoroark and teching for like Pikarom, and at the same time you can have like one copy of this just so that the Riolus aren't dead when you're not up against those matchups. So something worth noting. We have Meloetta, which seems pretty trash. A pretty strong Zygarde. It's a 90 hit point basic with 1 retreat. It has the ability Sell Company. As long as this Pokemon is on your bench, Zygarde's attacks, including Pokemon GX, do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So you're trying to be essentially a Diancie for exactly Zygarde GX and Zygarde non-GXs as well. Bear in mind, if you play other Zygardes that aren't this one, you can only play 4 copies total. So you can only have like 1 Baby Zygarde active and then 3 of this guy buffing it. So it wouldn't you wouldn't be plussing 80, you'd be maximizing with plus 60. I guess you could have a Diancie for plus 80, but yeah, bear that in mind. It has its own attack, Boost Fang. For fighting, you do 20. Attach a fighting energy from your discard to one of your benched Pokemon. This is actually really strong, because if you can get lots of these Zygardes out, you're essentially doing a Baby Yveltal style effect, or more similar, I would say, to a Baby Volcanion, because you had all those steam ups to get early pressure, but also early attachments from the discard pile. And that's how this is going to feel. If you get multiple Baby Zygarde down, and you have like a Zygarde GX, you can use this Zygarde as your early attacker to start powering up Zygarde GX and putting pressure on the board very quickly, with a non-GX active as well. And then it serves as damage buff for the GX as well. So I feel like this is a really strong card. Its typing is strong, and it's cheap and effective, and I can definitely see it having early pressure as well, because we already have Diancie. You can have up to 4 of these, so you can buff this damage a lot. Obviously, when this is active, it doesn't work for itself because it has to be on the bench, but this is buffed. This could be 100 damage turn 1 and attaching 1 to the bench, and that's without considering like choice band and stuff. So that's a lot of pressure. That's really insane, whilst also getting attachment value as well. Your bench will look kind of crummy and you won't really have a draw engine, but I could see it being a good like fighting rogue deck. We have a Hooper, which has 2 colorless attacks. It has Evil Admonition, 10 plus 20 more for each of your opponent's Pokemon that has an ability, so a lot less scary than Weavile. This will probably never see play as an anti-ability like tech. Mind Shock, just as 80, yeah, that's really terrible. Mawile GX is a 170 hit point GX, which is really on the low side. It's also weak to Fire, which is potentially not a problem, because we might already just be playing Reshizard anyway, which will be one-shotting everything. But if there are non-GX fire decks that can hit into this, it's going to be a real pain. It has a nice resistance to Psychic and a 1 retreat cost. Has the ability Captivating Wink. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you may have your opponent reveal their hand. Put any number of basic Pokemon you find that onto your opponent's bench. So this is a Captivating Pokepuff effect on a Pokemon, and that's actually pretty disruptive, and it has great synergy with its own attack. Hustle Bite, for a metal colorless you do 10, and 30 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it's a little bit cheeky, trying to buff that damage yourself with Captivating Wink. Maybe disrupt the opponent by getting rid of Marshadows and putting Lele's on the board as well, giving yourself easier prizes to take. So that's pretty interesting. Another thing that this card has going for it is its GX attack, Big Eater GX, for that same cost of metal colorless. Your opponent reveals their hand, discard all supporter cards you find there. Let Loose into Big Eater can be, you know, a pseudo version of Unfair GX from Honchkrow. It's an extra way we can try and ruin our opponent's day just by giving them nothing to play with, which is scary at times, of course. I think the fact that this has only 170 hit points makes it kind of fragile for a main attacker, even though its ability is strong. It's also not, you know, the cheapest attacker. It's going to take 2 physical attachments a lot of the time. The Big Eater is awkward to deal with and scary, for sure, but I don't think it's quite enough to push this into a strong card. Maybe a tech card. Again, we have stuff like Giovanni's Scheme. Maybe, again, this mill deck can sort of take advantage of this, put down a big chunky retreater that your opponent's obviously holding into their hand, or any Pokemon, really, if they're just trying to play the fewest amount of cards possible. You can force cards onto their board, force Marshadows onto their board if they're trying to save it for when you're doing, like, Steven's Resolve loops and stuff. You can force those into play, and then Giovanni's exile them out of play for yourself. So these sorts of effects, these sort of one-drop effects, seem a lot better if Giovanni's exile is actually going to see play. So something to bear in mind there. But I don't think it's strong enough to be its own sort of attacking deck. It doesn't have enough hit points. Excavalier has 130 hit points. For a metal, it does 80. If your opponent's active, has no damage, this attack does nothing. Absolutely terrible. We've seen this on a Gliscor, which was a fighting type and can technically one-shot Zoroarks, and didn't see any play. So this will definitely not see play. We have a Garchomp and Giratina Tag Team GX. 270 hit points, weak to Fairy, basic Dragon type. It has 3 attacks. The first for a colorless does 40 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. It's a reasonable type, you know, it's some early pressure. It's something to worry about. It's obviously crumbing over Ditto Prism Star, which is definitely worth noting. It has then the Calamity Edge attack for Psychic Fighting colorless. Does 160, and if your opponent's active Pokemon already has damage on it, you do 80 more damage. So you're pretty much one-shotting stuff if they already have damage counters on them. How do we get damage on them? Well, there's potentially like Shrine that we could go for. There's Spell Tag if we're going to be like a Psychic deck. There's also, of course, Distortion Door, probably the main one that you are thinking of. Because this is likely going to be an Malamar deck because it has Psychic as part of its attack cost. We have Viridian Forest, and we've seen that Ultra can work with having one element that's different to Psychic, in Metal in that case, and in this case it's Fighting. One good thing to note is that if you're splashing Fighting into the deck, you can splash Fighting Tech Pokemon that's better than just like Marshadow GX, which a lot of them go for at the moment, that obviously get shut down by Muck. Now we can have better Fighting Techs to improve the likes of Zoroark, and that's always a matchup that you want to keep in mind, because Zoro is always going to be strong. So I think this does a good chunk of damage, and might be worth playing around just because of that, but it may be less powerful than Ultra Necrozma just because the GX attack from Ultra is very, very strong, and this guy's GX attack is pretty weak in my opinion, outside of Wombo Combo win in one turn type plays. It has the GG End GX attack for Psychic Fighting. Discard one of your opponent's Pokemon and all cards attached to them. If this Pokemon has at least 3 extra fighting energy attached, in addition to the cost, you discard 2 of your opponent's Pokemon and all cards attached to them instead. There's a strange way that you could just win the game outright if you do, like, similar to how Plea can cause win conditions. Just if you go, like, Cyrus into Plea, if you've poisoned the active and they have, like, 10 hit points left, you can just win the game. Here you can do some shenanigans, force your opponent to like pick up stuff, and then GGN to discard like their 2 things remaining. It's a really weird way to try and win the game, but it's potentially there, but right now it's really hard to accelerate 5 energies, especially 3 of them being fighting rather than the extra 3 being psychic. This is pretty much very, very difficult to get this GGN GX attack off. So right now I'm intrigued by its second attack, but that's really the main thing that I care about. It may just end up being weaker than Ultra though, especially because it gives up 3 prizes. There's a Latias that does 20 to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy attached to that Pokemon. Not too shabby. We normally see this on stage 1, so that's a reasonable card to bear in mind. There's also like dragon buffing type stuff. We have an Axu that has the ability Unnerve. Whenever your opponent plays an item or supporter card from their hand, prevent all effects of those cards to this Pokemon. That's actually a really good ability, especially on a little basic guy like this. It means you can like freely attach turn 1 to this guy on the bench, knowing it can't get Guzma'd up or like hammered away and stuff like that. So that's actually a really, really solid ability on a basic. Potentially it's a driving force for this card. It's also obviously a dragon type, so we have to think about Mysterious Treasure for searchability. Really important for like stage 2 Pokemon. Then we have this Haxorus, 150 hit points stage 2. 3 retreat cost is pretty hefty. Weakness to Fairy. It has the ability Grinder Up. Once during your turn, you may discard a Stadium in play. If you do, attach up to 3 in any combination of fire or metal. Yeah, fire or metal energy cards from your hand to this Pokemon. Attaching fire from hand isn't too difficult, especially with Fire Crystal and the big oven or whatever it is. So that's not going to be too difficult. Metal energy as well. We have obviously Mount Coronet. So there's a lot of ways that we can recycle both these energy cards, which is very, very good. Its attack is Powerful Axe for Metal Fire. Does 10 and 40 more for each basic energy attached to this Pokemon. Okay, so here's the plan. We're trying to use Grinder Up. We're going to have a lot of Stadium cards in our deck. There's obviously Devoured Field that we could play. There's Shrine that could be very good. We'll have to think of some other Stadium cards that we can add into the deck. Obviously, removing your opponent's Stadium is a big deal. So the idea is we use Grinder Up as much as possible for energy acceleration. We either use like Big Oven or Mount Coronet and those sorts of synergy cards. Get big, powerful axes going. 40 for each. So 120, 130, 170 if you just manually attach that turn. There's Welder as well to push us over the edge. This Haxorus is really interesting. I like this guy. I think because the Axu is so powerful, this has a chance. I'm always skeptical about stage 2s, but because this can take advantage of the fire synergy cards, like Welder and Salazzle even, I could see this having a chance. That ability is strong for really good tempo for damage, and 150 hit points on a stage 2 is awkward to deal with for a lot of things. I think because of this Axu, I'm tempted to play an archetype like this. Doesn't quite feel like the most consistent thing we could be playing, but it feels like it has the power behind it. Then we move on to the colourless stuff. Kangaskhan is pretty unimpactful. We have a stage 1 Bibarel that has the ability Unaware, prevent all effects of your opponent's attacks except damage done to this Pokemon. And 60, choose one of your opponent's attacks. Okay, pretty bad. We have a Munchlax, which carries on with the baby ability thing that we saw from the Unbroken Bonds set. And it has Feast Search. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin if heads, put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. Either way, your turn ends. This at least has 0 retreat. Don't tell me why Munchlax has 0 retreat. Normally it's a big old chub, but for some reason he has. But still a really terrible ability, in my opinion, because your turn ends half the time. Then we have an Unpheasant. That's pretty terrible. Tornadus. So this synergizes with the Thunderous that we talked about. It's actually in the picture as well. It just says 20 for 1 or 80. If Thunderous on your bench, 20 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So it's trying to be like an OP version of Tapu Koko. But Koko already has Electro Powers, so it can do it just for 1 attachment, and this never will be able to. So this is literally just a dead space on your board if you're trying to use that Thunderous as like a tech card. But yeah, I think the Thunderous is a reasonable potential Zapdos tech if Zapdos remains like worth teching against. That Thunderous is annoying for it, but it is committing to deck slots and bench spots as well, so potentially not that worth it. But yeah, that's going to be it for the cards, guys. I think the biggest ones, the Oven is amazing. I mean, this card is, I still love this card, incredible. We've got some interesting stage 2s, actually. We've got the Haxorus with the awesome basic Axu. There's the, obviously this is an interesting card that people will be building around. We have the Zygarde, which is a pretty powerful basic. We have the Garchomp, which will be played around as well, trying to be the sort of comeback card a lot of the time. And we have that, this slightly underwhelming, but still Lightning Pokemon, because Lightning has so much support. This will maybe just be successful enough because people want to play Raichu instead. This is an interesting stage 2 as well. So we've got like 3 interesting stage 2s. 2 of them are dragons and 1 of them's that guy. But yeah, that's really all the stuff we have from GG End. But yeah, interesting stuff. That stamp is incredible. Obviously, a lot of people have mixed opinions on it, and a lot of them are happy. A lot of people are happy to see that card. A lot of people aren't. I'll be going more into detail about that card because I could talk forever about it. I think it's awesome for the game, and there's a lot of different angles that you can try and discuss it. So I'll be talking more about this guy for sure, probably tomorrow. So hope you did enjoy, guys, this hot take. If I got anything wrong or mixed up, let me hear down below, and I'll discuss it with you as well. So let me know what your favorite card is from this set. Are you going to try out any of these wacky stage 2s? And yeah, that's it for today, guys. Hope you did enjoy, and I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers.